Hi, everyone. Welcome to Real Estate in the Time of Coronavirus. My name is Michelle Heavey, and I'm an events officer for the AC Hub and corporate events. And today we are joined by Bruce and Rachel of Blue Panda Realty. So before we get started, we just want to go over a couple of housekeeping items. We ask that you please keep your microphone on mute during the presentation, but we encourage you to turn your cameras on for a little bit of face-to-face time. And then along the bottom of your screen, you will see a button called chat. Feel free to use this feature. You can introduce yourself and connect with the college community. And throughout Bruce and Rachel's presentation, if you have a question, we welcome you to type your question in the chat, but we will have a formal Q&A period at the end of the presentation. So just type it through there and then we'll get to it at the end. So now to kick off today's event, we are going to give everyone a question to answer. All you have to do is type your answer in the chat, but don't press send until everyone's had a chance to type out your answer. We're all going to send at the same time. So the question is, choose one place to live. So whether it's rural, city living, or the suburbs, what would be your ideal place? You can type it in the chat and then I'll count down from 3 and then we'll all press send. We'll go at the same time. So 3, 2, 1, go. Awesome. Perfect. Looks like a mix by the ocean. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. So continue to use the chat throughout the event. So now I am pleased to welcome our 2 special guest speakers who are both actually Algonquin College alumni. So Bruce grew up in a farming country outside of Ottawa, which allowed him to enjoy a sense of security and freedom that comes with living in a small town community, while also being able to experience all that the city has to offer. In Bruce's free time, he enjoys outdoor trail running, skate skiing in Gatineau, and playing tennis. And Bruce is a graduate of the event management program and now works as a real estate agent for Blue Panda Realty. And Rachel is an enthusiastic real estate maven. She's born from a military family in Victoria, BC, and then moved to Ottawa, and then Colorado Springs, USA, and then back again to Ottawa. Rachel has brought a unique perspective to Ottawa's residential real estate market. Rachel's clients love her genuine, upbeat attitude, knowledge of the real estate market, and ability to properly guide her clients to strike while the iron's hot. And Rachel took Algonquin College's public relations program. We are so thrilled to have Bruce and Rachel with us today. So now over to you guys.
Bruce, are you ready to take over?
Yeah, hello everyone. How's everybody doing? My name is Bruce Libbos, and like Michelle stated, I'm with Blue Panda Realty. And Rachel?
Oh, and I'm Rachael Herrndorf, and I'm also a real estate agent with Blue Panda Realty.
Yeah. We're really looking forward to this, and it gave us time to reflect over the last few months. Like, COVID's affected everyone in the world and every industry, and it gave us time to gather our thoughts and just think about how much it really has changed the industry of real estate. So we're looking forward to getting this presentation started with you right now. So I'm going to start with kind of how we got here. And in order to understand where we're at today, we need to go back to 2007 almost, the US recession. And when that happened, it took a few years for us to climb out of that, the real estate world especially. There was years of steady, uncertain growth. And the market finally found its footing around 2014, and prices rose gradually, hitting a peak in 2016 in Vancouver with the average price of a detached home increasing by $1 million in 1 year. And in Toronto, the market kind of mimicked Vancouver's, and it hit a red hot pitch fever in 2016 with a lot of foreign investment, mainly coming from mainland China. And although they were minority players in the game, they were big players in the expensive market, which was constrained, so it drove up all the other prices. So that happened in 2016, and the repercussions from that was, a lot of people worried what was happening to our market, where we were going to hit another bubble. So the Canadian government, mostly municipal governments and provincial governments in Vancouver and Ontario, put in a foreign buyers tax in Vancouver and Toronto in 2017, which is a 15% charge on purchase prices there. And that kind of calmed people's nerves, and the psychology of the consumer was like, okay, things will become a little bit more affordable now. But the market just kind of continued to increase with what was going on in 2016 and 17. And then in 2018, the federal government enacted a B20 stress test, which basically made you now put 20% down on a home. Your credit score had to be higher to qualify with an A lender. And, to simplify it, the purchaser basically lost 20% of their purchase power. If you could afford a $500,000 mortgage before, you're now affording a $400,000 mortgage. And that was trying to calm, the bubble that they were figuring was going to burst. So with all that said, it kind of created a consumer conundrum for them. Should we buy now? Should we not? There's all this regulation coming in. The market's crazy. It's not going to continue this rise. So from 2018 to 2019, there was, a bit of not of a complete slowdown, but prices rose modestly. And at the beginning of 2019, there was this pent up demand from that year and a half of the consumer deciding to kind of rest and see how everything played out. And prices began to rise again, and it got crazy. And then, of course, COVID hit, and that ground things to a halt for the month of March and April. And when things were open again and released, they were released with historically low interest rates. So you've got this 3 years of growth, and then the 1.5 year of kind of not a slumber, but a slowdown, and then pent up demand released finally with historical low interest rates. And Canadians are obviously, people are at home, they're spending less, their savings are up, and they're not going to take these holidays, and they've got these historical low interest rates. And the market in Ottawa that was buying real estate, the ones that were affected by COVID, weren't really part of it. It was hospitality, the industry, restaurants, all those. And some of them do own real estate, but it was difficult for them to begin with. So the Ottawa market wasn't really affected, and you had this fourth buyer come into the fold, which we'll talk about later, which is the out-of-town buyer. I'm just going to skip slides here. And so with all that being said, that released a crazy market in Ottawa, and that's what we saw this summer, with everything just going nutso, and the average price of a home going up the amount that it did. It was leading 2007 to 9. And I'm going to pass it off to Rachael now, and she can discuss of what's happening in Ottawa right now.
So, well, and I'll kind of take it from what happened in March. So with the announcement of everything shutting down, there was so much fear. So a lot of buyers were like, I'm just going to take a back seat and basically trying to figure out what we want to do. But some were still keen and ready to go. But then because the demand was there, and they're like, okay, well, now we're going to compete with less people who aren't ready to go outside and or higher risk or whatnot. So then house prices in September hit $622,000 for the average residential home. So Ottawa's, we still have, even with the recession, we still had a climb. It was just a quick dip, and then the market continued to grow. And so like, because we have the government, because we have the tech sector, because the government takes about 50% of employment. We still are such a stable market compared to other cities. And then we don't have foreign buyers tax. So it's really to our advantage. And then in 2019, Maclean's magazine said that Ottawa is like one of the best places to live. So then it brought more immigration as well, as we reached a million people. And then there's anyways, about 28 new people move to Ottawa every day, and immigrants make up about 25% of our population currently. And our household income is very strong compared to house prices. So the average household income in Ottawa is 118,000. So it's quite high. In certain areas, it's even as high as 130, 140,000. So houses are still affordable to those families. So there's still quite a strong demand. Bruce, do you want to go to the next slide? Thanks. So basically, houses, when COVID first hit, there was just such a decline in sales because no one wanted to make a move. Everyone thought it was like a huge risk because it was all these unknowns, and we were still trying to figure out how to go about selling and buying properties in this different age. So we now had to change things. So there was COVID disclosures, and there was, so anytime you went into a property, you have to have your client sign off. So showings were more limited, kids weren't allowed, and it really was shifting the whole market. And there was like a lot of uncertainty in the market at the time. So that's why the sales were down. But then because everyone was home, through the summer, and they were like, okay, we need more space. Everyone was reevaluating. The market was still pretty strong. So they were like, okay, we can still get a good chunk of money out of our house if you are like looking to upsize, or if you're like, okay, now commute times are irrelevant, so we're going to move out to the country. So sales then went up in September there. And then condos. So like there's less of a demand now for 1-bedroom condos, but condos, because nothing else was affordable, the sale prices went up for condos, because condos aren't just the typical downtown city dwellers. There's suburban condos, there's townhome condos. So like because of the affordability of them, sales were up by about 21%. So the average house price jumped up about $100,000 this year, which is unheard of in previous markets. And then, so millennials were living, a lot of them, because you're not going out, you're at home, you're saving, and you're working from home, you're realizing that you need more space. And a lot of them are like, okay, well, I'm home now, so we'll get dogs, so because we have time to train them and stuff. So then they started moving to the suburbs, looking for more space, as you both need a home office and things like that. And then the baby boomers were like, okay, well, our kids are out, so now they're looking to downsize, and they've made significant equity in their homes. So now they can move further out. So bungalows are currently really in high demand. I've even seen as high as like 16, 20 offers on some bungalows in the market. And then the baby boomers are also co-signing for their kids. It's very common in Toronto. It's about 90% cosign, but not as common here. But it is becoming more common as homes become more expensive. Do you want to take over there, Bruce?
Oh yeah, sure. So in Ottawa, we have people shifting places and spaces. There's a huge niche market of people. I'd say the majority in Ottawa that are pre-approved for a mortgage in the 475, 550 range. And their options are limited. You know, those detached homes in Ottawa right now that are listed at 499, 550. Realistically, they're going for 610, and they're just pushing people out of that pre-approval price range. which is, so when it comes down to it, they can afford a a townhome or condo, and they don't want that. They want their money to be working for them. So they want more space, a bigger home and a yard. And with that 550 pre-approval, they don't want to move to a townhome, which is nothing against townhomes, but I understand it. So those people are now moving out of town to rural areas. And due to the irrelevancy of like it says here, the commute time, they're moving to places like Almont, Carleton Place, Russell, Kempville, Limoges, Maxville, Winchester, the list goes on. They're all moving to these smaller towns because they're working from home. They don't need to be downtown. They're not getting the amenities of the city, and they want their money to work for them, and they want to enjoy more space. So these are the shifts that we're seeing right now in the Ottawa market. And with those people moving out of town to the rural areas, you have Torontonians that are moving to what they consider a rural area, which is Ottawa. They're selling their homes in Toronto for $1 to $1.6 million. And they're coming to Ottawa, and they're purchasing those $600 to $1 million or $900K range homes. They have got capital to boot coming from Toronto, and we're seeing this shift of people in spaces. And people are saying, well, who are buying these? Who's coming in? It's a lot of Torontonians, it's Montrealers, it's Vancouverites. And they're sick of the crazy market that is where they live. And even though us Ottawans are like, oh my God, I can't believe the price. It's cheap comparatively to those other big cities. The Ottawa market is still undervalued, to be honest. It's sad to hear that, but people are coming in and filling those spots. And they're saying the population of Ottawa is going to increase by 200,000 people in the next 20 years, which it sounds like 20 years is a lot, but geez, I looked the last 20 years, it's flown by. To think that, 200,000 more people will be here, that's that much more demand for these homes and these single detached homes. So I still think it is a good time to buy right now, as crazy as it seems. I'll pass it back.
Winter is actually sometimes a better time to buy because, as Bruce would probably also comment, is the people that are selling in the winter typically have to sell because they've either purchased a property or they need to move. And we're getting to the end of with all the COVID regulations, there was deferral, like you could defer your mortgage payments up to 6 months. So we're getting to we just reached the tail end of that deferral time. So I've talked to people in the finance industry, and they were saying that they expect it to happen between now and March for the inventory that actually has to sell to come to the market. And we're even seeing just a slight increase of inventory. So there's just, rather than competing with 10 other offers, you're competing with 4, which just, it makes it just slightly better, but can't erase the comparable sales. So if a home has already sold for a certain amount, it's likely that if your home is very comparable, that it will sell for a similar amount, and that you can still ask. So it's almost like the sale prices have plateaued, and then it's totally property specific, but the home market has just really kept increasing because there's such strong demand. And I think we'll see strong demand next spring, as people haven't been home for a full winter before, just locked indoors for a little bit. But COVID's really changed the way we do business. So open houses were banned, and it depends on the market, but we weren't allowed to do open houses, which is where we typically meet a lot of buyers, and a lot of deals occur through those open houses, and we weren't allowed to do those anymore just because of the spread of COVID. So that that really changed things. So the nosy neighbors wouldn't be stopping in. So the quality of showings was up. So it was really only buyers that were serious. We would see sometimes 2 or 3 other agents in a showing before. Sometimes when you're shopping around, and with COVID, it was no longer allowed, which was great. Unfortunately, kids were no longer allowed, so parents were tag teaming just because we were trying to limit the bodies in a house. And then there was always sanitization stations, and masks were always involved since COVID occurred. And then the agent was only allowed to open cupboards and touch countertops and turn on appliances and things like that. So we really tried to protect our clients to the best of our ability, both as buyers and as sellers. And then sellers had to sanitize down between showings as well. So it really changed things on our end, but not in a bad way. And then also, like Bruce and I are lucky that we work for a pretty technologically savvy company, but so we do all our documents through electronic signature, but we're switching to virtual open houses. And then we have, through the lawyers, when you get the keys, typically there would be a meeting, and now the lawyers are just releasing the code to the keys so that the buyers can get their keys without seeing anyone. And then we're like, the relevance of virtual tours and like real estate videos are way more popular now. There's more of a demand, but we're even shifting to have meetings over Zoom like this presentation. So things have
Rachel, how many homes have you shown and sold that the people haven't even physically been into the unit? It's just been virtual tours. I know people hadn't really experienced that before this. Have you sold any where the person hasn't even seen the unit?
So I've had a couple sales. One of them, I was helping a Torontonian buy a condo for their kids to live in during university because they were kicked out of residence. So they were like, Rachel, we need something right away. So I had already hunted around with them. This was just as COVID was happening, but I used to work for new builds. So people buy homes off of floor plans often. So it's not totally crazy. And now we have technology. Like I was on FaceTime. I walked my client in sending videos. I was down making sure that the baseboards were all set, and yeah, they bought it without or I've had it happen a couple of times where they've bought it without seeing it, and I've heard of overseas buyers also doing the same thing, but they see it just electronically. So it's pretty neat how it's shifted and how the trust has changed. But now they're happily living in there, so it's all good.
Awesome. So now we're going to the first-time home buyer information. There's a lot of things to take into consideration when you're going to buy a home for the first time, or any time really. But one thing you want to do is get pre-approved 100%. You want to seek out a mortgage broker professional, either your bank or a mortgage broker, and get that pre-approval, because what you think you can afford and the actuality of it can be two completely different things. And the last thing you want to do is just start, going with a realtor and seeing places, and you kind of look in that 550 to 600 or whatever the price range is that may be above your affordability. And you get used to seeing properties in that range, and then you get your pre-approval, and this is what your actual purchasing power is. And it can be a bit of a downer, because then you have to kind of downgrade and your expectations are higher, and the whole experience will kind of be ruined for you. And when you do go through a mortgage broker and seek pre-approval, I'm just going to head over here. An example of how they work is that if you had a salary of say $90,000, it's times 4 to 4.5% of your salary, and that will equate to you being able to get a mortgage of $405,000. Then debt gets taken into consideration, student loans, credit cards, car payments, and then also your assets, if you own a car, what your credit score is like. And a big thing is they'll take into consideration if you just bought a car, that debt, the payments heavily affect your mortgage capability. So if you're thinking about purchasing soon, you definitely want to take into consideration if you're I really want that car, I've been saving for this car.
Whatever you do, don't do it.
yeah, whatever that debt will really affect your mortgage pre-approval. So maybe you want to drive around in that beater for a little bit longer until you secure that mortgage, and then make that decision after the fact. There are all these little things, but we're not mortgage brokers. It's just a very a basic outline here for you.
Down payment also goes into consideration with that. And then you also want to look at a mortgage broker, because a mortgage broker will shop rates around, whereas a bank is only going to give you the specific rate. And then mortgage brokers sometimes, like there's things called like mortgage plus improvement. So if you want to do some renovations to your homes, banks have this access as well, but reach out to a mortgage broker, and honestly sometimes reach out to a realtor before that, because sometimes we have recommendations, because there's good and bad realtors, there's good and bad mortgage brokers out there as well. So it's just important to have a strong pre-approval before you start shopping. And then just to tail on and add on to Bruce, if a pre-approval on a condo is going to look very different than a pre-approval on a home. So like I had clients and you're pre-approved for $415 for a condo, but then if you're looking for a home, then you can afford up to $460,000, for example, rather. So it takes into consideration in the condo fees and what the condo fees include. So sometimes you'll see a high condo fee, but then your hydro and your water and everything's covered, and you have quite a few amenities. And so sometimes some condo fees aren't always what they come off as. So it just make sure to work with an agent to figure that out.
And the next step after you've done that is choosing a realtor or a real estate agent. Both of one are the same. Both are the same. But you're gonna want to ask friends. Often we get referred by clients, but ask friends. Do a social media dive. Do your research, interview them, ask around what other people's experiences are with them. But first and foremost, I think you want to form like a personal relationship. You feel comfortable with that person you choose. Like you can go for a coffee with them, kind of friends. You want to have that trust and common interest to a certain degree, I think, and make sure they're looking out for what's best for you and they have time for you. That's a big one. So that's step 2. And step 3 are kind of your needs and wants assessment. This is a big one. We'll both kind of riff on this. We'll go back and forth, but it's kind of being strategic in what you actually want. Like everybody wants that home with land. Can you afford it? And are you willing to go out? But what do you really want? Or what do you really need, I should say? Like, where's your life? What age are you? What are you projecting for the next few years? Because even though you want that home and yard, maybe what you actually need is like a condo downtown. Maybe you like cafes. You want to be able to go to the gym. You want to be, near amenities, near people. Are you single? Are you in a relationship? What do you foresee is happening to your life in the next few years? We were talking about people leaving condos right now, wanting more space and moving to those rural areas. But, there's actually, I'm not pushing condos right now, but I think there is like a good deal to be had. The value is a little bit lower right now in condos because so many people want space. But things, if you look big picture. In 2 years from now, things are going to, I think, return to normal. Even if people work from home, you're going to have to go back in the office at least 3-4 days a week. Just business and industry culture, you kind of need that. So what are going to happen to all those people that have, decided to move to Brockville and have to work in Ottawa? Or in 2 years from now, there's going to be a massive migration of people that come back to the city. And condo value is going to go through the roof again, I believe. So like thinking strategically like that, like if you're in school right now and whatever you're taking, are the jobs you're going after, are you working for the government? Where are their office spaces, the jobs that you want? Where are they situated? Are they downtown? Are they in that core? Even though you haven't got that job yet, if you're looking, maybe you do want to be in the downtown core. Think big picture. And maybe a condo right now, we talk about when I talked about in 2017-18 when people kind of rested. Well, fortune favors the brave. I've seen it throughout my life that, when everyone's resting, the people that are proactive and going after what people don't want is kind of like sometimes where deals are. So like when I'm talking about condos, when it's not very popular right now, well, 2 years from now, I think they're going to come back with a vengeance when everyone has to be downtown again or wants to be close to work. So think about what your needs and wants are. Have a chat with your realtor friends and be honest with what you can live with and what you can live without. And even though, you want to be in the countryside and that, is it realistic? So maybe you want to right now go spend a week with somebody who lives out there and see how that feels. And if you miss the city and then driving to your workplace, 5 days a week from there and seeing how that feels, do your due diligence. And I'll pass it over to Rachel now.
I was just gonna say, yeah, like a big factor a lot of people look into is like you want to go and you want to Google Maps, and you want to Google Maps at the times that you would actually be commuting as well to go into this space. And like it also, you want to think about how long you're going to own the property for. And if you think that the property, so I had a client like a couple of weeks ago and bought something, and I was like, oh, are you really sure you want to buy this property? Because it was in a rougher neighborhood. And I was like, if you're only owning this for a couple of years, like you may not see the return on investment. And he was like, nope, I believe that this is a gentrifying area and like I'm willing to take that risk. So again, as Bruce says, fortune favors the bold. So my fingers are crossed. But there still is demand. There's still multiple offers. I was just, and you also wanted to just be careful with when you're searching, because sometimes properties, like a pricing strategy is often something people do in this market. So they'll price it, especially if you see like $399, $499, $449, $599. Some of these properties are priced this way to hold multiple offers. And if you see no conveyance until such and such a date, it's typically an indicator that the property is underpriced, and a seller can always accept, reject, or counter an offer. So they can even choose to decline all of the offers if they don't get what they want, and then relist the property for a higher amount. And I've seen it happen. And I've seen people even with $80,000 over asking, and they say, no, I want more. And it's wild. So just if you have property and if you're looking to sell, but to go back to what Bruce was saying about the condo market, condos are also great investments and it's also because interest rates are so low, it's also a very good time to refinance. Like I had a client and her interest rate dropped by half just because of the new timing. So sometimes when you cancel a mortgage, you sometimes have to pay a mortgage penalty. So it's about three months, sometimes more of interest, and that cancellation can sometimes be worth it if your payments are going to decrease by that much, or your affordability can increase. So sometimes you can even qualify for a mortgage, even if you have an existing mortgage, if you have a lease in place on your property as well. So it's a good time to have an investment too, if you can. But there's so many advantages, like there's the land transfer for tax rebate. So you get about $4,000 back if you're purchasing as a first-time home buyer, whereas otherwise you would be paying quite a few $1,000s. So anything above $400,000, you're going to be paying land transfer tax, but anything under that, you are not. But finding something under 400,000 is a little bit tricky in this more central areas. But yeah, know what you need and want, and know what areas you want to be in, because that's going to really help narrow your search. And then you can have your agent throw you on a search. So, and it can be as broad or as narrow as you'd like. So you can see everything that's going on. And you can even have them put you on the sold. So you can see what a property is listed for and then what it sells for, just so you get a sense of the market when you're beginning. And then as soon as you find the property, then you want to submit an offer. So things to think about when you're starting your search is you want to know how much money you have liquid to put down as a deposit. So a deposit is part of your down payment. So it's typically not your whole down payment, but it's typically between like $5,000 to $10,000, which can be used. And I know a lot of people use their RSPs for their down payment on their home. So that money needs to be liquid. So you need to take that out before you want to purchase a property typically. So you just want to keep those little things in mind.
That's
so
about 90 days, eh, Rachel?
Pardon me?
It's about 90 days.
About 90 days, yeah. And then another thing to think about is if you're currently renting, you'll have to give your landlord 60 days notice. So typically closing dates range between, so if you accept an offer on the property, that you can get it as soon as, if the property is vacant, you can kind of, depending on the property, you can go as early as 2 to 3 weeks, or as far as about four months out typically is the range of closing dates. So you can buy something and then not move in till the spring even now, if you are looking to do that, which is great because then you secure it at today's price. But when you're looking, there's so many options. Resale is not your own resale. Like there's condos, there's new builds, there's so many different options that you can buy. So you really want to figure that out. And so I would definitely recommend chatting with a realtor. But yeah, so closing dates you want to think about, because you'll have to give your landlord notice if you're currently renting. And sometimes that makes or breaks the deal if the closing dates don't match up. So, and then the purchase price. So if you want guidance on purchase price, then you hire a realtor, but you can also use a realtor if you find a property and you just want customer service, which means that the agent isn't going to guide you on price. So you can get customer service as well. But
yeah, there's two types of deals. There's the client agreement and then there's the customer agreement. And basically the two differences that Rachel's talking about is the client agreement. We can guide you. We're legally obligated to have your just best interests at heart. And if somebody else comes in, we'll sign them if they wanted to purchase with us and they have a customer agreement. We can't guide them on price or give them much guidance. Those are the two differences between a client and a customer. So go ahead, Rach.
Oh, and then yeah, so an agent's going to make sure, so there's different conditions as well that go into an agreement. So there's the home inspection, there's sometimes there's a septic inspection in rural properties and a well inspection. So these are all additional costs as well, which as a buyer, you'll have to be prepared to pay for. So home inspection typically runs you around $600 septic inspections around the same amount, and a well is around $200. So all in, if you're looking for a rural property, you want to have it like a nest egg of about $2,000 set aside for those types of inspections. And then there's a financing condition. And then if you're purchasing a condo, there's a status certificate review condition that can be put in, and is typically always in there unless the status has been pre-ordered and reviewed by a lawyer. And these conditions protect you as the buyer. In this market, because how strong it is, we're often seeing all of these conditions waived. So it's called a firm offer. So it has none of these conditions. So your agent's usually gone to the mortgage broker or the bank to make sure that your financing is all set to go. Sometimes you can do a pre-inspection. So it's a risk, but you pay for the home inspection to know what's going on, and then you can submit your offer accordingly. But I've seen people do pre-inspections before and then not win in the offer. Not my clients, but other people. And anyway, so you do risk that $600, but then you have that peace of mind going in, and then you can bring a firm offer. And
yeah, I don't mean to interrupt you, Rachel, but I know you glanced over. I know that we're broadcasting to some of the rural campuses with Algonquin College, and the difference from the city to the rural countryside, as you touched base on, is the septic, the well, a wet inspection, which has to do with wood stoves, and your home inspection, and they're drastically different things. Like you were saying, in the city, where people are putting bids on homes right now, offers, we're starting to see conditions creep back into deals now, because it was just so competitive. It was such a seller's market that if you wanted to win, you kind of had to have, it's crazy, no home inspection, no financing, and just a firm deal. And they're starting to come back. But in the countryside, the rural area, the deals I've done recently, like you definitely want to get that home inspection. You want to know if there's vermiculite, if there's asbestos. You got to have the septic inspection, because unlike the city, where everything's on a municipal sewage system, you don't have to deal with septics. But in the countryside, your septic tank, which to get a new septic installed is $30,000 to $40,000. You have your septic tank, and then you have your septic bed, and those have to be inspected to know where they're at in their lifespan. They typically last between 22 and 30 years. So whenever it was built, and that can be just a huge cost on home buyers when they take ownership. So there's a lot of the city people that are, if you're thinking about moving to the rural areas and you're wanting to get that, you have the mind frame of, okay, no conditions, we're moving to the countryside, but they're two different things. You're going to have to always have a septic inspection done, home inspection, and obviously you're on a well, you're not on municipal city water. So you want to get a water potability test done. You want to know the depth of your well. Is it drilled? Is it dug? Preferably drilled. So it's a whole different thing. It's a bigger process for the rural areas. You want to be prepared for that, and definitely including those conditions, and make sure your real estate agent does. And it's a little bit more intensive. So there are two different things: city and rural. And and after you've kind of gone through that and decided, and you put down that deposit, which Rachel already talked about, you're going to choose your solicitor, your lawyer. And that's basically, that's when we hand you off after you've been, the deal's firm, and it's a done deal, and now you're just waiting to your closing date. Though that goes between the buyer and the seller, and their lawyers kind of deal with it. And that's land transfer, tax. It's all just the paperwork. Not a lot of work for you, but it's generally the cost of those things with your lawyer. It's about 1.5% of the purchase price of the home. So if you buy a place for $500,000, it's going to cost you about $5,000 in lawyer fees and closing fees.
So sorry, can I just interject quickly? So
Yeah.
the lawyers aren't going to charge you like $5,000. Like the lawyer
No, sorry. Yeah,
like,
that's your closing costs.
would charge you probably like $1,500 or less. It depends if you're buying and selling. If you're buying and selling, you may have a bit of higher of a payment, but just for closing on your first property. And then there's also little things that may come up in those closing costs. Like if you're buying a new home, you may have a carry-on enrollment fee, which is if you're purchasing a new home in Ontario, that like most builders have carry-on, which is the warranty. So you have a year warranty for any minor issue with the home, and then 2 years is for anything plumbing and electrical related, and then 7 years is for anything structural. So your foundation is all covered through those warranties. So it's an advantage of buying a new home, but it's also an additional cost that comes up at closing.
Rach, I know we're cutting close for time here, and we've got another slide. So obviously the last one is closing date. You get your keys, you move in, lawyers figure all that out, everyone's happy. But we're going to do the last slide. And if you're thinking, if you own a home and you're wanting to improve your home's value, we'll go through this somewhat quickly because we want time for questions, if there are any. And things you can do to improve your home's value, professional cleaning on your house to make it look, the difference between what you think your house looks like and when you get professional photos done, it seems to just pick up all that clutter, everything. You just want really clean, not a lot of things everywhere. And it might look bare to you in person, but on photos, it's very appealing. Decluttering, depersonalizing, taking all those photos of your family off the walls. I know it's terrible, it hurts, but like people want to picture themselves in that home and
as
knick-knack.
home ready as you can.
Yeah. So, and declutter, really clean that space, make it bright, make it open. All that really helps for showing and for photos. It makes a world of a difference and can possibly garner you, a lot more money than it should for the amount of work that is put in for when you declutter and depersonalize, how much money you can get out of that. If you're selling your home, it's astounding. Even updating little hardware, cupboard handles. The difference between a cupboard handle that was installed in 2000 to just going and making that investment of a couple $100 and putting new handles on, and just that update makes a world of a difference in that first impression when a buyer comes through your home or for photos. So that, fixtures, paint,
trendy light fixtures too are huge. Make such a difference.
Yeah. And just general home maintenance, your furniture, if you're thinking about staging, because staging does, if your furniture is kind of tacky, you might invest a little bit of money, but it the returns might be very worthwhile for you. Artwork, not too much artwork, but you just need a few main pieces. Make your space bright, new curtains, white, open it up. Scent neutral. Anything else, Rachel?
I think you've covered the vast majority of it, but just if you have a home to sell, you want to know the age of your furnace, you want to know the age of your roof, age of your windows, all of those things, because those all influence value. And especially if you're looking for a firm offer, you want to do all of these things, and then you want to be very careful about strategizing. And I guess just the last thing to go, just because I actually had a cousin ask me about this the other day. They're like, Rachel, do we have to put 3% aside to pay the realtor on closing for helping us buy the home? No, you don't. That's covered by the seller. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to someone, because we're here to provide service. So, and also
we
just
get paid from the seller. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And fine. Heating, like in rural properties, you just want to be mindful of heating, because oil heating, for example, if your oil tank is older than 2014, like you can't be insured and things like that. So there's all these little nuances that you want to be wary of because rural properties are baseboard heating, oil, propane. Bruce, am I missing a few? Sometimes it's natural gas, but it's very rare, it seems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it. That's the end of the presentation. We're trying to fit a lot in here in this time frame. Hopefully we didn't babble on too long. Yeah, I guess we can go to questions, and I will pass it back off to you, Michelle.
Perfect. Thank you so much, both Bruce and Rachel. That was super informative. Lots of great tips in there. So it is a Q&A period now. So if anyone has questions, you can either raise your hand by, I think you just open up the participants tab and then click raise hand, or you can type out your question in the chat and then I'll read it out loud for you. So we just have a first question. Does it cost anything to get pre-approved? Do you know how long that pre-approved is valid for?
Rachel, do you want to go ahead with the first one?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do it. No, it doesn't cost you anything to get pre-approved. And if you are going through an A lender, you don't have any mortgage fees. But if you don't have great credit and things like that, or you have a complex situation, sometimes if you're self-employed and things like that, then you have to go through a B lender, and then sometimes there are associated costs. So you're going to pay a higher interest rate, and then you're also going to have to pay some upfront fees to the lender just to give you that mortgage sometimes. So a pre-approval typically lasts about 90 days. It depends where you're getting it, and then like what factors they've taken into consideration.
All right, perfect. Next question. Should I avoid using a realtor who represents both the buyer and seller in a sale?
I would say yes, it happens. I try to avoid it. I just feel when that happens, it happens a lot when you list a property and people don't have representation and they come and they call you and you're like, I can show you the home. And then all of a sudden, well, first off, we ask them, do they have representation? They don't. And I can show you the home, but basically my obligation is to the seller. I have a representation agreement with them. And all I can do for that person is have them on a customer service. I can't give them pricing information. Now, some realtors, they will probably lower their commission because they're representing both, but I will tell that person if they're coming to see and they want to go through me, I say, that's fine. You just tell me an offer, I can put it forth, but I can't give you any guidance. What I recommend is I would pass them off to another realtor who can really represent them and give them advice, financial advice. And they'd just be better served that way. It does happen. It can work if the buyer feels secure in that, but I try to avoid mutual representation. And if it does happen, both parties are aware of it. We sign forms letting them know that there's mutual representation. But I don't. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Can I just take over for a sec?
Yeah.
We typically try, like in our brokerage, we try and typically like buddy system. So if someone wants to be represented, it's still multiple representation if someone else from the brokerage is representing the buyer and then someone else is representing the seller. So it's still multiple representation, but there's a little bit because there's essentially implied knowledge, but it doesn't necessarily give them that much of an advantage. And it's very messy. So we try and buddy and then so if I'm listing a property and I have a buyer, then I would typically have Bruce represent them in that transaction. I've even seen it in the sense that I've had a colleague of mine, and he's like, I have two clients of mine that are interested in the same property. I've taken both to go see it. One I've guided on price, one I have not. So then he transitioned them off to me to submit an offer on the same property. So he didn't know any content. So we try and be as ethical as possible, and we try and really be cautious, and then just go back and forth. But yeah, no, it's not there's a lot of mix-ups. I've done it once before, but it was an off-market sale and I provided customer service to the buyer, and the buyer was very, their wife was a real estate lawyer. So it was very, like someone who was a very qualified, knowledgeable buyer that could represent themselves, but we typically try and stay away from it for sure.
Okay, perfect. There's no more questions coming in. There was just a note, someone saying like, thank you. It's been really informative and helpful. Thank you for your time and sharing your knowledge and experience. And I definitely want to echo that. It was super informative. And I was at my parents in Toronto a few weeks ago, and I overheard ladies in Toronto talking about investing in Ottawa. So it's just interesting that you were saying, like, I think it will still continue to go up, like, even though everyone thinks like it's at its peak, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see. So it was really nice to hear your insight. So we'll just do this. A question from Rose here is the last question. So if I want to buy a semi-detached home by the end of year 2021, when should I start my search for a home?
Do you want me to take it, Bruce, or do you want to go?
Yeah, go ahead.
So typically I try and have clients start about 2 to 3 months before they actually want to move. We can typically secure a property within a month. It depends how picky you are though too. So it depends on how committed you are to the process, because if you are gonna be as committed as I will be, like I always say to my clients, I'm available from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. and like then I'm not really reachable unless we're in the middle of a transaction. But it totally depends. If you want to take your time, then I would say start 6 months before. If you want to get it done, then I would say only about 3 months before. So it depends on, like, you have to know yourself and know your decision making, because it is going to be like probably one of the biggest investments of your life. But you just know how you make decisions and how quickly and how committed you are to the process. Because I've had clients and they're like, okay, I want to buy in 2 weeks, and we find a property within a couple days, just because they're ready and eager. And like I've had clients who I'm like, okay, like the property, like they've looked for months, and I'm like, okay, the property you want just came up. You come see it tonight, or you're not getting it for a good price. And so they made the trek out, and then we secured it for under asking, which was wild. But it in the heat of the seller's market, just because they were able to accommodate a 6 month close. But it really depends on your decision making and your ability to offer, because sometimes people want to see quite a few properties. I would typically recommend seeing between like 5 to 10 properties.
And getting them on, like if she's looking at that time period for a semi-detached, doesn't hurt to meet a realtor now and getting them on a property search for everything that they want. And we can send them every property that's under that criteria, and they can get a kind of a sense of what they want and what it's going for in a certain area. And so when the time comes, they can either see the gradual price increase, probably not decrease, but they can have a more realistic expectation of what they're looking for and what the cost of it will be. And then once they're ready, like Rachel says, 2 to 3 months out, then start actually going to see places. But it'd be good market research to get them on that property search.
Okay, so there was one more question. I recognize that it's 10:58. Are you guys okay if we do one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So, question is, what recommendations do you have for first-time home buyer with your partner, unmarried?
Right. Recommendation of first-time home buyer with their partner.
So I would say probably get if you're both purchasing, make sure to go through a lawyer and have a set agreement. Not like a separation agreement, but like basically like an agreement of the assets and things like that. If there was ever to be a separation, just so that it's clearly understood. If there's if there's an imbalance of, like, I've had clients where like say the boyfriend's putting down the down payment, or the girlfriend got an inheritance and she's putting it down. So it just depends on how you want to do that. But I have clients who are twin sisters and there's a boyfriend on on title, and then they all have like a cohabitation agreement. And like they all say that they own like 33% of the property, essentially, or 33 point whatever percent of the property. So just make sure to have that paperwork. But yeah, that's the recommendation.
That goes through more. Yeah, that's the legal aspect you're covering. And again, if it's a first-time home buyer and if she's just saying it's her and her boyfriend, maybe she just threw in we're married. I don't know, but like, yeah, go see a mortgage broker. You know, see what your purchasing power is through them with both your salaries, and maybe you can afford more or less than you think. Yeah, and first-time home buyers, you're getting that rebate, which is really nice. So I guess that cover it.
I think that's good. Yeah, thank you. And then also we'll add the Blue Panda Realty link to the chat, if that's great. And then if anyone has questions, maybe they can reach out to you guys directly. I think I saw your
yeah, or on Instagram either.
Oh yeah.
If you guys want to type out your handles maybe in the chat, and anyone can connect with you guys. But I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you to all of the attendees who joined us and participating in this virtual event. If you're interested in watching the recording, it will be added to the AC Hub On Demand website. So we'll just add that link to the chat. And our next virtual event is upcoming on Tuesday, and it is November 17th at 1 p.m. And it's a Project in Kind Campus Edition. So it's a partnership launch. So you're going to learn about volunteer opportunities that are coming available to students. So that link, if you're interested in that, will also be added in the chat. So again, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Bruce. It was so great to have you guys, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thanks for participating. Bye, guys.